Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I am a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So we have some really important planetary energy that we need to get into. So Mercury just went retrograde today in Scorpio and it is sitting with the sun. It's opposite Jupiter retrograde. It's getting disposited by a debilitated Mars. We have a lot of energy that we need to analyze today through Vedic astrology. So, little story time, okay? Because I have Mercury in Leo. I love to tell a good story. I woke up today and I didn't even actually let it sink in that Mercury was retrograde today because as an astrologer, I do so many of other people's chart analysis and I'm just so focused on other people's charts and other people's astrology that I honestly forget about my own astrology most of the time, to be quite honest. And I forgot that Mercury just turned retrograde in my sixth house of routines and daily, habits and things of that nature. And I woke up today and also sixth house of work as well too. And I had a big miscommunication with a client where they, booked last minute and then it overlapped another client and I was like, what's going on? And then I was supposed to take my car in today and I had a feeling, guys, I was like, I'm going to call them and double check to see if I can actually bring my car in today because I just had this intuition, like something feels off, right? So I called them and they were like, actually, this guy is sick, so you can't bring your car in today. And I would have drove all the way to go do that. And then they would have told me that in person. So I'm so glad that I followed my intuition on that one. But essentially with Mercury retrograde, now you really want to see what house Scorpio is activating and highlighting in your personal chart because it's in my sixth house of daily routines and work. And my whole daily routine and work got kind of this retrograde motion to it. Literally the day I woke up on Mercury retrograde in my sixth house and I was like, of course. Which is funny, right? Because as a professional astrologer, you would think that I'm constantly conscious of my own chart and the way that things are unfolding, but I'm so kind of wrapped up in my clients and other people's charts that I don't always honestly really check my own astrology that much, which is kind of funny, right? But it's always so beneficial to know your astrology and to work with your astrology because you can really, change things and use your free will to work and move within karma and destiny, right? And that's what astrology is. It's about knowing our fate and understanding our fate and then taking our little free will within it and maneuvering around it, right? It's really, really powerful. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Mercury retrograde chart because Mercury just went retrograde today. Best believe it. Best believe we're going to have a lot of Mercury retrograde themes unfolding as well over this next month. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart so you guys can have a visual representation to follow along, which I think is really useful when doing astrology analysis. So let's get right into it and let's shift over to the Mercury retrograde chart. All right, so here we have the Mercury retrograde astrological charts, and let's go over here to where we see Mercury retrograde in Scorpio in conjunction with the sun in Scorpio as well too. Okay, so Mercury is retrograde. It is in the sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is this energy that is very intense and potent in itself, right? Scorpio is very deep, it's very psychological, it's very analytical. Scorpio energy likes to get to the root of things and the root of more intense issues, right? So when this planet goes retrograde, it means that we're taking a lot of the Mercury energy and we're sort of coming to a halt and we are slowing down and we are reflecting and we're more internal or reflective around that planet and around that sign, right? So Mercury rules communication, Mercury rules business, Mercury rules technology, 100% rules technology. You will find technology issues will occur in Mercury retrograde. Mercury also does connect, I've found, when it goes retrograde to cars and vehicles. Okay, so we are going to see a lot of car issues come up as well while Mercury is retrograde. Okay, best believe it. I've heard So many stories already of car problems. The day that Mercury turned retrograde, it really does happen. So you want to double check your communication, you want to double check car issues, you want to double check business, you want to double check anything that is mercurial by nature, right? And Mercury is also this very intellectual energy. It's our mind, it's our logic. So when it goes retrograde, we sometimes have to double check our logical, analytical thinking as well too, and make sure that we are making decisions that are actually coming from a positive place, right? It's not this like irrational decision. We want to make sure we're kind of thinking things through, double checking things when a Mercury retrograde occurs, right? And because it's with the sun and it's in Scorpio, you can also find that a lot of people are going to be going back and reflecting on past, intense psychological things. Maybe there's like unhealed things, unresolved things that come up. You'll find during a Mercury retrograde, people tend to attract past things that will come back to get reviewed or resolved in some manner as well too. So, if Mercury's retrograde in your fourth house, let's say, you can have past family issues come up and come back to be worked through or resolved. Mercury's retrograde in your seventh house, you can have past relationships come up and come back to be resolved. Mercury's retrograde in your sixth house, which it is for me, and this has already happened, you can find things come up in your scheduling and your daily routines and work that have to be resolved or reviewed or revised in some degree, right? And the beauty, guys, the beauty of astrology is that you can work with the energy, not against it, right? Because everything is energy, right? We live in this reality where everything is energetic, okay? So if we work with energy, we can live a really fulfilling, positive life. If we try to kind of oppose natural energy, we can find a lot of roadblocks, a lot of, misalignment on our path, okay? So if we work with Mercury retrograde energy, we double check things, we really communicate in a way that feels like it's been thought out and thought through, we can actually really thrive during a retrograde period because we're learning a lot of lessons and reflecting a lot on that house and that energy. All right. You also want to see if you have a natal Mercury retrograde, because I have a natal Mercury retrograde, and when Mercury retrogrades happen, I find myself to usually have a pretty good time. Like I usually have a really good experience because my natal Mercury is retrograde. So when that retrograde occurs, it's almost as if we're kind of living with that like normal planetary energy. So you want to check for that as well too in your personal charts. All right, so Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, there's going to be, some focus on our thoughts in connection to the deep and the dark and the psychological. And you might find a lot of people are prone to more negative or obsessive thinking as well during this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio with the sun, right? So we have to watch our obsessions. We have to watch negative, pessimistic thinking. We have to watch out for these, ideologies or views or beliefs that might be more negative or pessimistic by nature as well too with Mercury retrograde with the sun in Scorpio. Okay. Now, what's very interesting is this Mercury retrograde does directly oppose Jupiter retrograde, which is in Taurus, right? What is Jupiter? Jupiter is the karaka, or the indication of philosophy, of, gurus, guides, teachers. Mercury is the karaka, or the indication of education and the mental and technology and all these things. So because these are directly opposing each other and both planets are retrograde, best believe that a lot of people are going to be arguing or having issues or miscommunication around beliefs and ideologies and philosophies, right? We're going to find a lot of people are having this like friction over this Mercury retrograde period about what they believe versus what someone else believes. Best believe it. Guaranteed. I'll put money down and I will bet on it, baby. Because of that Jupiter retrograde opposite Mercury retrograde, okay? Because Mercury is our, the way that we process our thoughts, our communication. Jupiter is our ideologies, our beliefs, our philosophies. So when both planets are aspecting each other in this retrograde energy, we are going to find a lot of issues around communication that directly correlates to beliefs and philosophies and, politics, political beliefs, things of that nature. 100%. And it's really interesting as well too, because when we have like Mercury retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde, we can also find that people can have these new beliefs emerging, these new philosophies, these new ideologies. So perhaps people have friction and there's a lot of arguing about these things, especially it's kind of wild that this is happening during like the holiday season and the holiday time period, because this is going to create so much of that natural friction with like families and different people coming together and trying to get on the same page. We're going to find a lot of friction there. Interesting timing, right? But also, we're going to find that people can be reviewing or revising their beliefs at this time, very much so, right? With Mercury retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde. So people might have, believed something to be true thus far, and when Mercury goes retrograde, directly opposing that Jupiter retrograde, a lot of those beliefs and those belief systems come into question at this time. All right, so maybe there's like a sense of what was, thought to be true before. We're starting to question a lot of that. Okay, so there's a lot of that energy going on, and a lot of friction is caused between our beliefs and other people's beliefs, and there's sort of this clashing going on with Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury retrograde as well too. So, okay, Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury retrograde can also show that we might have some friction with gurus, guides, teachers, things of that nature as well too, right? Because when a planet goes retrograde, we're sort of just like, we're questioning, we're more skeptical, we're more internal, we're more reflective. And Jupiter is the karaka of teachers, guides, guru, father, mentors, right? And then it's opposite Mercury, which is our logical mind and our thought processing. So people are going to have a lot of questions about mentors, gurus, guides, teachers. There might be a sense of like, I don't really need to take other people's teachings so much. Like I can start to trust my own teachings with that opposition as well too. Mercury aspecting Jupiter can give us this really interesting philosophical thought if we want to really channel it, right? Because when a planet goes retrograde, we're more internal or more introspective. So Jupiter retrograde aspecting Mercury retrograde would give a few things. The more negative manifestation, which one of my teachers, James Braha, would say is that like Jupiter aspecting Mercury can give a lot of expansion of the nervous system and a lot of anxiety and a lot of overthinking. Like those two planets don't necessarily do well together, okay? Because it will expand the nervous system in some regard. So having to watch our anxiety, our overthinking, specifically with Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, and then Jupiter aspecting Mercury. So it's a time when people can feel more anxious, maybe up later with more thoughts. It's a little bit more of that heady energy. But I do feel like Jupiter aspect on Mercury, especially in Scorpio, can also give us some really like interesting philosophical ideas and spiritual ideas as well too, where maybe we can write something that is more, philosophical. We can go into our own world and kind of reflect on more interesting beliefs and viewpoints as well too. Okay, and especially if you happen to have like Jupiter retrograde in your chart and Mercury retrograde in your chart, this is a time when you can really come up with some really interesting, expansive ideas, 100%. Okay, so this Mercury retrograde, because it is in Scorpio, gets disposited by Mars, which happens to be debilitated in Cancer. So that's interesting, right? We have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, which is already intense. Then it's going to get disposited by a debilitated Mars in Cancer, right here, right? Okay, so what does that mean? It means that, again, there's a lot of this friction, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of this argumentative energy. Because of that Mercury disposited by Mars, right? Mercury disposited by Mars shows that our mental energy, our processing, our communication is going to be disposited by the planet or the karaka of fighting, justice, right? You're going to find a lot of friction with people's beliefs and viewpoints at this time period of Mercury retrograde. Best believe it, okay? And because it is disposited by debilitated Mars, we really, really want to be careful, guys, of not being too impulsive or too swift or too quick moving with our ideas or our thoughts. We might jump to a lot of conclusions with Mercury retrograde disposited by a debilitated Mars. We might find ourselves getting angry more quickly. We have to be more cautious when we're driving. We have to just move a lot more slowly because a retrograde planet disposited by a debilitated Mars, best believe that people are going to be angry. They're going to be doing things more impulsively. They're going to be spewing out ideas and spewing out thoughts that aren't maybe fully formed. Okay, so it's kind of this like quick impulsive anger if it's not worked with properly as well too. All right, so we see that Sun conjunct Mercury retrograde, disposited by Mars in a debilitated placement. So it's not like Mars is functioning to its best ability, okay? Mercury is not functioning to its best ability, and then it's disposited by a planet that's also not functioning by its best ability. So we really want to watch that energy of being too angry or quick to jump to conclusions as well too, okay? We do have Saturn, which is now direct in Aquarius. So, there's more of that Saturn energy going forward, which means discipline, order, structure. Those themes can be more forward moving at this time. We can really implement a lot of this like forward moving energy, but then we should also kind of wait to implement new ideas and goals and business ventures until Mercury does go direct. So, this next month or so, you kind of want to not necessarily put out the most of your new ventures and new ideas, because a Mercury retrograde is the time when you want to go within and reflect on all these ideas, and then maybe in, a couple months or so, really put those things out there as well too. Something I find with Mercury retrograde is our processing can be a little bit slower, right? Because Mercury is that planet of processing. So we might find ourselves more scattered during a Mercury retrograde time period. So a good way to kind of work with that is like making lists, writing things down, double checking, triple checking things. If you get like a weird intuition about something during Mercury retrograde, like, I don't know if this is going to happen, I don't know if this is going to go through, like double check, triple check, okay? Also being careful and cautious with technology issues. So if you happen to like work a lot with your computer or your phone, or you work a lot with technology, you want to double check everything. Let's say you have like a Zoom meeting that's coming up, you want to double check to make sure like your Zoom application is going to work, things like that. If you happen to have a business or work in business, you also want to double check that things are going to run smoothly in business, because Mercury is also the karaka of business. Okay. What I do really like about Mercury retrograde time periods, I have to admit, because I have that natal Mercury retrograde, is a lot of things from the past can come back to be reviewed, resolved, reworked out, worked through, right? So there can be an issue of like when we come, or there can be a resolution of a past issue when we come to the end of Mercury retrograde, where something that maybe felt unsettled or finished in some regard karmically, it can come back to kind of be worked through as well. It's not a time period in which I would start something new, start a new business, put out a new business idea. Absolutely not. But it is a time when it's really good to reflect on business ideas and business ventures and things that are perhaps more deep or introspective or, psychologically fulfilling in some way as well too, with that Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. We're going to see that a lot of people are maybe coming out in the media or coming out in some way, talking about past intense experiences that can connect to scorpionic themes. So perhaps there can be themes of, abuse, sexuality, things like that can really come out in the media as well during a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio as well too. So I'll be interested to see if that starts kind of unraveling more so in the media as well. And another thing that's interesting about Mercury retrograde opposite of Jupiter retrograde is we really want to like question a lot of these media outlets and news that we're getting, information, right? Mercury rules information. When it goes retrograde, we're kind of questioning those things and we're reflecting more on those things. And Jupiter also connects to justice and things that are righteous in some regard as well too. So maybe we're like watching news articles come out and we're like, I don't know if that's necessarily the truth, right? There's a lot of that energy, a lot of things that may have been hidden or unfair or unjust from the past can really come out in the media at this time as well too. And Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, we can also absolutely find that there are themes of, dark sort of secrets from the past coming out into the light. Maybe darker stuff that happened in the past can come out into the light in the news and in the media as well too. So the main consensus of this Mercury retrograde time period is it's going to be intense for sure. People are going to have more negative, nihilistic sort of thoughts and ideologies and beliefs that come up to get questioned. We're going to find a lot of people are arguing, fighting over their political beliefs with that Jupiter retrograde opposite Mercury retrograde. We're going to find that a lot of people are, struggling to get on the same page when it comes to their belief systems, their views versus other people's belief systems and views. We're also going to find as well, too, with that Mercury retrograde disposited by Mars, that there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of like swift movement with people's speech and their communication. You might find people are more angry. There's more outbursts as well, too. Okay. It's also a really great time to question, anything that we've sort of been told during this time period as well, too. Anything that we've thought to be true thus far, we can really question and reflect and go into this more internal space with Jupiter retrograde opposite Mercury retrograde as well, too. All right, so I would say the best way to work with this energy is you want to check your charts to see where Scorpio is highlighting in the chart, right? Is it the 6th house? Is it the 5th house? Is it the 7th house? Is it the 8th house? That's going to give you a lot of answers to where you need to just slow down and really double check and triple check things and make sure that you're more introspective around that energy as well, too, and not so swift or quick moving as well. All right, the great thing about astrology, guys, I've said it once, I'll say it again. When you work with energy, you can live a very positive, fulfilled life, okay? When you understand energy, you don't have to be scared of an astrological phenomenon happening, right? Mercury retrograde is nothing to fear. But when we don't know about it, we're kind of like, oh my God, why is all this stuff more blocked? Why is there more friction? Why am I having car issues? Why is this, client not communicating properly, right? Why am I getting in an argument about politics, right? Things like that, because you're not understanding planetary energy and you're not working with it, all right? Okay, so I hope this brought you guys some insight and some clarity into this Mercury retrograde that just happened today. So I wanted to get this video out for y'all so you can see the energy unfolding. Just double check everything, triple check everything. Be careful with your technology. Don't lose your AirPods during this time period. That actually literally happened to me. I went to the desert last Mercury retrograde and I had just bought these AirPods and I went to the desert with my friends, and by the time that I got back from the desert and it was Mercury retrograde, I was like, nope, my AirPods aren't with me. So I lost my AirPods in the desert during Mercury retrograde and I had just bought them. Best believe that did happen. So you want to double check for technology, make sure you're not losing things, and just double checking everything and moving very slowly, and specifically around vehicles as well too. All right, I'm sending all the love, all the good vibes. Love y'all. Comment, like, and subscribe. More stuff is coming soon.